So everybody can learn how to use the box call. It is very, very deadly. These birds, they'll never know what hit them when you get used to using these box calls. A couple of tips though, a couple of hints. When you first get up in the morning, you're out there before daylight and you're making your way into the woods and so forth, you're going to be very quiet walking in and you can hear everything around you, the owls hooting and the birds gobbling. You want to be very quiet. If you take a seat and you're within 100 yards of these birds, you're going to notice that when they're talking in the trees, when they're doing their tree talk just about daylight before it starts to get light, they're very, very soft. They're very quiet. What we're going to do is I'll show you how to do some soft calls, and that's how you'll start out. A lot of the people will use a slate call at the very beginning because it's very soft. And it makes those little yelps and cuts and purrs real nice and soft. So that's what you want to do. You don't want to overdo it when we first start. But we need to know how to work the call first of all. So, for starters, I want everybody to hold the call. If you're left or right-handed, it doesn't matter. But hold the call somewhat like this. Okay? Just like with the slate, you don't want to grab it too tight. You don't have to. But hold the call similar to this, for starters. There is another way to hold the call. You can hold it, actually some people prefer to hold it like this and work the call. But for us right now, let's hold the call like this. Everybody chalked up their calls, right? Everybody's got them chalked up? Okay. What we're trying to do is imitate a hen that's calling for her mate or calling for other birds if she's lost. So the way to do that, holding the paddle with your two fingers like so, everybody can see that, you'll want to slide the lid right across this one rail. Just slide it right across. Keep working on it. One thing you might want to do is make sure that there's nothing inside. That will take away from the sound or the tone. Okay? So you don't want anything inside. But that sounds good. What we need to do is an even sound, like yelp, 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 yelp. And that's how you would do it. Make them nice and even. For starters, you might want to do that 5 times, 6 times. Yelp, 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 5 or 6 times. And that's how we would get the big old Tom's attention. Okay? In the morning, again, you want it nice and soft. Not very loud, just soft enough. These birds will hear you. You don't have to go crazy on it. A little later on, if it gets windy or later on in the day, you'll bring the tone up. Okay. Any questions on how to get that sound? You all sounded pretty darn good with that. Okay. That would be the yelp. The ones that we were just doing, that's a yelp. The other sound that you're going to hear, turkeys make a lot of sounds, by the way. Everybody knows that. There's different types of talking that they do. The gobblers will gobble. They'll also yelp, and they have what are called cuts and purrs. On the box call, you can do a purr very easily. You just basically, well, this one's not doing it very well, but you slide it across the top. It's a little trick, but when the birds are feeding, that's kind of what you'll hear. And if you tilt the paddle a little bit on an angle, it usually works pretty good, like that. Yep. Okay. Anybody having a hard time doing that with the purrs? It sounds like you're getting it. It takes time. It takes a lot of practice. It really does. Get that down. But Some calls work better than others too, but practice. So that's the purr. That you'll hear when they're feeding, or if they're just sort of walking around, kind of, you know, in the woods scratch, and you'll hear them purr. The other thing that they do is they cut or they cluck a little bit. And you'll hear that. And that's one of the communications that the hens will use oftentimes, and so will the jakes and toms. But it's just a way of talking to each other, saying, hey, I'm around. You know, things are pretty cool here. And you can do that with a combination with a purr. You can do that. If you do that too loud, however, this one's very important because this could mess up your hunt real quick. If you have a bird coming in and you're just sort of giving them the little heads up that we're here, if you do it very loud and very sharp, that bird's head is going to go up and they're going to leave the area. That's a warning, period. It's telling other birds there's something wrong here. It's time to move along. So you don't want to go and do it real loud. You just don't want to do that. Make it nice and soft. The way, I'm ahead of myself. Guys and girls, to do that, all you would do is take your paddle, rest it on top of one of the rails, and basically just lift up on it. And you'll hear it pop a little bit. That one's a little more difficult to do. Just pick up on it. Yep, just a little. It's tough. It's got to really be chopped up good. Okay, so let's get back to basics now. We'll get back to basics. You heard the birds, you're out in the woods, you've heard the birds, you know where they are, they're up in the trees. Let me hear you do a soft call, just a soft yelp. Nice and soft. Remember, it's only 3, 4, 5 times. That's all you want to do it. Yelp, 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 yelp. And then you would stop. One of the things that it's my own, I have my own feelings and so forth, and people will tell you differently. You really, really don't want to overcall, especially in the morning. You want to just do it enough if you have to let a tom know that you're there. You don't have to go overboard doing it. Once the bird hears you, they know you're down there. The tom knows there's a hen around somewhere. You don't have to go overboard. There's been times I've gone out in the woods and you don't know if there's another person near you or not, but you'll hear if there's another person out there. They constantly do the call. There's no better way to get that tom to go in a different direction at fly down than to call too much. So just call a little bit when it's just getting light. Okay? So we've done that, nice and soft, nice and easy. Once that bird gets down on the ground, once he gets out of the roost from up in the tree, on a day like this, if it's raining, he may not come down right away. It might take a few more minutes than you really, thought it would. He will come down. Once he does, then you might want to get his attention a little bit more. If he doesn't fly down to you, start bringing up the volume a little bit. Okay? Yeah, you bring it up a little bit. There you go. Okay. Now that you have the bird's attention, once you've got his attention and you're paying real good watching the bird, you can see him off in the distance. Once you have his attention, you almost don't even have to call again. If you see that bird walking towards you, if you know that that big old tom or the jake is coming at you, put your call down and just wait. You don't have to call again. And again, that's my opinion, my personal belief, that once they know you're there, he's going to come in. It might take him a few minutes. If he starts to walk away, or if he starts to go in a different direction, maybe he hangs up a little bit, he doesn't want to come right in, then you would do your call again. But just remember, when you're doing it, they can see you moving. Hopefully by the time they see you moving, they're within range and you can take them down. But you need to be very careful because they will see you. Okay? So, if you have that bird in range, you're all done. You don't have to use your call again. Does anybody want to try doing the call in this manner here? This seems to work pretty good too. Yeah, turn it upside down. There you go. And you, one other little hint. When you're doing your calls and you're doing it, say 5 times, little yelps 5 times, if you do it slow, that tells the birds everything's okay, that they're not excited, they're doing their thing. Life is great for them. If you start to speed that up in an excited manner, that changes the atmosphere for the birds. That changes how they're feeling. They may think maybe there's something wrong. So keep that in mind too. When you have a tom that's really excited and he wants to come in, if you speed that call up sometimes, that'll bring him in also though. So you might try that. Any problems with your calls? Anybody having defective calls anyway? No? They've heard us from down below, I guarantee you that. Okay. All right. A little word on taking care of your box calls. Just like the slate calls, you're going to put chalk on them like we explained. The idea is that when you're using the call a lot, it's going to wear out the paddle, it's going to make a wear mark. You want to make sure you chalk that up as often as you feel comfortable. Like if you move from one position to another, when you sit down, chalk it up, okay? You don't have to sand it down every time, but lightly put some chalk on it. At the end of the year, when you're all done, at the end of the springtime, if you're not going to hunt in the fall, you guys and girls can take and just little lightly sand it with some sandpaper, very, very fine paper, very, very light, to get some of the old chalk off. What the chalk will do is it will absorb moisture if you leave it on there. So when you're all done at the end of the season, take that chalk off and store your calls in a dry place. The chalk that you use, is it okay to use chalk from a school? Remember in the old days, I don't even know if they have chalkboards anymore, but they used to have chalk that they would use on a chalkboard. Don't use that chalk. Use carpenter's chalk, the chalk that builders use, or the chalk that comes with the call. The other chalks have oil in it and it really doesn't work so well. So just use that type of chalk.